Hi folks, I'm Suguna Papachan. I'm Secretary of Persatuan Sahabat Wanita. I'm supposed to bring a artifact for this talk, and it is my great-grandmother. We call her Putupati. When she got married at the age of 7 in those days, and when she was a young wife, she came with her husband and 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls, to South Africa to stay in Cape Town. In those days, they found Indian workers to work on gold mines in South Africa. So at that time, the latter part of the 19th century, she came to Cape Town and she became involved in the campaigns of Gandhi. She was a great lover of Gandhi, like most people in India in those days. At that time, the apartheid government asked Indians to print all their fingers and their toes onto the passport. So all the Indians objected and they burnt their passport. My great-grandmother was part of the campaign. She organized this campaign to burn these passports, and she became a great follower of Gandhi and campaigned on various rights on the Indians in South Africa. During the Civil War, before that, my great-grandmother lent my grandfather 10 gold sovereigns to start a cake shop in Kerala. Unfortunately, my grandfather didn't get to start that cake shop because he started the cake shop but it didn't make any profits. So my great-grandmother, that was a sore point between her and her son-in-law, and she thought, oh, now I cannot get my 10 gold sovereigns back, so let us all go to Malaya where the rubber is there and we can become rich. So she gathered all her brood, her children and her grandchildren, and sailed to Malaya. In the Civil War, in the fracas, her son was left behind because of the Civil War. Then she moved on to Malaya, and that's how she started her family, our whole lineage here. My great-grandmother is my maternal great-grandmother. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I was sitting next to her and my cousin was sitting across, and one day my great-grandmother just told me, would you like to hear a Swahili poem? I was too young to know what's a poem and what is Swahili, but my cousin, who just flared up and said, no need to tell her all these stories as she won't remember. My great-grandmother, knowing children, she went off on the poem. She rattled off the poem, and when she finished the poem, I asked her, Putupati, what is the poem about? She told me it's about mosquitoes. From then on, I just loved my great-grandmother. When I was in Form 2, I came to learn about my great-grandmother through my uncles and my mum. And she was a great storyteller. She would ask my mother to read the Tamil papers. She herself is illiterate, but she will ask my mother to read the Tamil papers so that she will know the politics of the country at that time. So my mother will usually run away, and she's a very loving person, and she'll call my mother and say, Vadi, come here. What's wrong? Just read me, la. What is this newspaper telling me? Then my mother will sit down there and she will read the Tamil headlines for her and the whole story. And when she asks question, she will just, my mother will just slip off. But because of her, my mother also learned Tamil and she became a Tamil school teacher. So when I was Form 2, I wrote about my great-grandmother. For my English class, my teacher asked me to come in front and read the whole story. My classmates were so surprised that, wow, a woman at that time, I take all her children and sail alone to Malaya. So they were all so surprised. When I was growing up, when I was in secondary school, there was domestic violence in my family. My father was hitting my mother was hitting me. I was the eldest in the family, and I was so angry with my mother. I used to cry when going to sleep, and I told myself I'll fail my MCE. MCE is Malaysian Certificate of Education. Before now it's called SPM. So I just didn't want to study for my SPM. I said, then something somewhere told me, you stupid girl, if you don't study, you can't get a job. So I started studying all my maths and physics and all that. And I got a grade 2. Thank God. Then my father sent me to India to study BSc, Bachelor of Science. And I came back as a chemist. And I started asking a lot of questions. Why am I angry? Why am I angry with my mother? So I joined a few organizations, and I came to know WAO. WAO was Women's Aid Organization. At that time, they just had a house in PJ, and we used to volunteer. And when I heard other women's stories, like one woman said her husband took a hammer and hit her breast. And when I heard all these different stories of violence, then I asked myself, oh, there are other women who feel the violence. I thought that only I myself felt it. Then I left my job as a chemist and started working with women's groups. I was one of the founders of WAO and the founders of AWAM. I also, being long time involved since the 1980s, involved with women's groups. But I found the women's group don't look at class issues, and that's why I joined Sahabat Wanita, which works with women workers. So although violence happens in all classes, in all societies, rich, poor, but how to organize them, you need to understand class. The thing is, when like for example, minimum wage, this government does not recognize the workers' involvement in the economy, the workers' contribution to this economy. What more, women workers themselves. Women workers are involved in the informal sector, like domestic workers. There is no law for domestic workers. You can hear so many stories of abuse and mistreatment of domestic workers. Domestic workers are workers who work within a home. And because it's very difficult for the government to monitor them, so we are suggesting that there should be a law. They should ratify the ILO Convention 189, which is for domestic workers. Only then the laws can be changed and to protect domestic workers. The Sahabat Wanita organizes domestic workers. We also run workshops with electronic workers. Now many of these electronic workers are women, and we just had a health and safety workshop where we look at how women for so many years, 30 years, they deal with chemicals and have deaths every year, have cancers, and most of them have cancers, breast cancer spreads all over. They have miscarriages and genital issues, fibroids in the vaginal area and all. So all these are not talked about. They were actually very shocked to learn that how chemicals affect them. Even standing for many hours can affect a person. So the thing is that we should ask questions about ourselves. Why are we angry? I was raped when I was 5 years old by my uncle. I was very angry with him. But I came to realize that when you get raped, you feel a lot of feelings in the clitoris area. But a lot of women don't talk about this. They suppress this. When we had a workshop in Awam, when we talked our own body, one Christian girl asked me, why do you masturbate? He said, it's not right.
So a lot of these things, when what we feel, it's in us. We feel all these things. It's society tells us that we shouldn't do this, we should not do this, we should wear headwear or whatever. We should eat this way, we should not put our legs cross-legged or open our legs wide. So all these things are in conflict with us. How do we adjust? How do we look within ourselves? So these questions you should keep on asking and searching outside. So with our society, with our friends, talk about these issues. I thank my great grandmother Putupati